Couples. What unromantic thing happened to you that's a stronger indication of love than others might think? Part 1. Do you have a weird story about love? Leave it in the comments. My husband got diarrhea so bad that it went everywhere in our bathroom, and I accidentally sat in it. I cleaned everything off, and jumped in the shower to clean his poop off while he was still going. I started puking in the shower from the awful seafood food poisoning smells. He says his time for me is us waiting in a drive-through line, and I sneezed a giant snot rocket all over my shirt and freaked out trying to hide it and find a tissue. I fell down some steps and broke both my arms. My husband wiped my butt and helped me shower, wash my hair, for weeks. For better or worse, that was definitely filed under worse. When we'd been married about 10 years, 2 little kids, jobs not paying enough to cover daycare and bills, and we're having the sort of fight that these stresses can precipitate. It was a nasty one. We were not holding back with unkind things said to each other. And then the phone rang. My dad was in the hospital 1,200 miles away. He'd had a stroke. Docs were unsure whether he'd live. The fight stopped and she told me to get in the car and go to the airport. She'd have tickets waiting for me at the counter. She'd call my boss and explain that I was flying across the country. Take how much time I needed. She would take care of the house and the kids and to not worry about anything but taking care of my family. Dad made it a few years after that, but now I know that no matter how hard life gets, and however much 2 volatile pig-headed jerks fight and yell, she isn't just on my team, she is my team. We'll be married 30 years this year. Life happens, and sometimes people aren't perfect, but when the world is against me, that little woman will grab my arm and we'll roar together, and nothing will break us. I grew up with my grandparents BC. Both my parents had to work various jobs simultaneously, so my grandfather was my world. I took care of him during his last 5 years, when he became bedridden. I tried to visit him as often as I could. He lived with an elderly aunt who fed him, but needed me to bathe him and, eventually, change his diapers and so on. Early in our relationship, my now wife would come over sometimes. One time I got to his house and found his fridge full and him watching TV, eating a bowl of ice cream. My wife had gone a few hours before me without telling me. 6 months later I proposed. My boyfriend made me go to the gynecologist to talk about getting an ablation after watching me struggle from crippling pain and bleeding every month for years. He said not to worry about money or anything else besides solving my problem. Fast forward 2 months and I got a call from my surgeon. Apparently I missed the fact that they did a biopsy when they removed my polyps and found uterine cancer. Had I been stubborn and continued to ignore my miserable periods for years, who knows what could have happened to me. No one expects uterine cancer in someone under 30. He held me while I cried, took me to every appointment, and helped me when I recovered after my hysterectomy. That dude is my rock. Why am I reading this? I don't even have a girlfriend. The last few years before my mother passed away, she had horrible diarrhea and had lost most of her mobility. So it was not uncommon for her to be unable to make it out of the bed, much less to the bathroom. Every time this would happen, my old man would get up, get her to the bathroom and cleaned up, then go back into the bedroom, pull the sheets off their bed, put them in the wash, and finish off with putting fresh clean sheets down. Oh, and he wasn't in much better health himself. But he never complained. Man, all of these are like medical conditions and crazy stuff like that. One time my girlfriend just said she wanted to see me but didn't wanna talk to anybody after a rough day at work. So she came to my house and sat in my bed with me while I played video games until we both fell asleep. Didn't say a word other than, hey, when she got there, and, alright bed. Love you. My boyfriend texted me one day when he was at the gym that he believed his rectum had prolapsed. No idea how, but I started Googling what we needed to do about it. I read that if it wasn't serious, you could just push it back in before going to a doctor, instead of heading to the ER. So what do I do? Put on a pair of gloves, lube my finger up, and kneel in front of him while he's lying on the bed attempting to push part of his rectum back into his anus. Turns out it was just a giant effing hemorrhoid when he went to the doctors the next day. But I think that was a moment in our relationship where it was established that we both had complete comfort with each other. If your partner can try and shove part of your rectum up into your ass, then nothing is really too disgusting or gross to discuss. My husband and I often end up showering together, and one night as he was about to get in he said, "Never mind. I'll clean up and get some food ready for you and let you shave your butthole in peace." My wife and I came to understand that we can sleep apart for the sake of comfort and good rest, without it being an expression of emotional distance. Sleeping separately saved my marriage when my insomnia gets bad and my husband's snoring gets really bad. I think it's wonderful to be able to sleep separately most of the time and still feel incredibly close to each other. My husband's family lived across the country and used to send us boxes of their almost new, good quality clothes that they no longer wore. The men clothes were great for hubby and sons, but the female clothes were always a bit too small as I had gained a lot of weight since they had seen me last. My husband always felt so bad for me. Then one time, my hubby lifted up a pair of pants out of the box and said happily, "These will fit you. They're huge." I still remember the look of horror that passed over his face once he'd realized what he'd said. But I loved the fact that he was happy for me getting a new pair of pants. I have a now 12-year-old daughter who is not biologically his, however she calls him Dad now and he always refers to her as his daughter. When she was about 10 he'd been moved in about 6 months we were settling into things as a family. I was working and they were home hanging out and she got her first period. I had briefly had a couple small discussions enough that she knew what was happening, but was pretty unsure what to do. So he handed her some toilet paper, told her the basic girl trick of putting it in her underwear and took her to the store. He helped her pick out some pads, detoured to the ice cream, chocolate, chips and bakery section and picked up Junior Advil just in case. They settled in on the sofa. He explained the basics of how to use it. Showed her a quick YouTube video. Made up a hot water bottle for her, popped her dirty clothes on to soak. And they snuggled and she talked about it and they Googled answers if he didn't have them. I came home to them having a nap on the sofa looking like a slumber party exploded and a happy child. Probably one of the moments I've loved him the most. My so puked in the parking lot on our first date. Before we even got into the restaurant. I thought she was having second thoughts because she just got out of a horrible relationship. Nope, she was on her period and it was bad enough where she would puke. We're married now. My first child was a stillborn, holding my wife while we both bawled our eyes out as she vomited on me and bled all over the bathroom floor. It's a memory that will stick with me forever. I had an ingrown hair cyst surgically removed from my butt crack. My sew had to help me stuff new gauze in the 1.5-inch hole in my flesh so it could heal properly. I bent over the bed while she removed the gauze used during surgery and she did her best. I ended up having to pull it out myself in the bathroom, leaving blood all over the floor and myself. Even after the trauma of trying to remove the first gauze, she came back to help me get the new gauze in place after I cleaned up. We called it my double butthole. During her first pregnancy, my wife vomited brown, congealed blood every night for her entire second trimester. We went to multiple doctors and took a few trips to the ER, never got a reason why. The vomiting happened every night after midnight, sometimes continuing sporadically for 8 hours. Don't know why, but it never happened during the daytime. One night, she thought she was finally doing better, so she went to sleep early and seemed fine. Then suddenly around 1 a.m., she jolted awake, which instantly woke me, and tried to run to the bathroom to puke, forgetting the puke bucket on her bedside table in her moment of panic. Unfortunately, she slipped and fell on her side, nothing hit her belly, and puked blood all over the carpet. She immediately started sobbing. That poor woman went through such a rough time. So I carefully picked her up, took her to the bathroom, held her hair back while she finished throwing up, then cleaned her face and got her some water to rinse her mouth out. I carried her to bed and then got to work cleaning up the carpet. We were just kids, still in college together. Those 3 months of misery galvanized our relationship. Nothing serious has ever come between us in the years since. Edit, just wanted to add, another great side effect of constantly seeing disgusting fluids erupt out of my wife is that we're both completely comfortable around each other's bodily functions. None of this "I don't want my husband to know I poop" nonsense. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. And please leave feedback, suggestions, and stories in the comments.